Today is Pentecost. It is the day that we remember the story about the disciples all being in one place 50 days after the resurrection, 10 days after the ascension. And the sound of a mighty wind came in the room where they were. That what looked like tongues of fire came to rest on each of them, and they began to speak, extolling the mighty works of God, and the people around them came from many different places and spoke many different languages, but they heard in their own languages these mighty works of God. The Hebrew word for spirit is ruach, which also means breath. And this past week, we have seen another person, an unarmed person, who had his breath taken away by police. He literally said, "I can't breathe." We saw protests. We saw the police in riot gear with rubber bullets and gas canisters. Not so long ago in Michigan, there was a different kind of protest over the ability to go back to work, to go back to the restaurants and bars, to have life return to the way it had been. These people came with camouflage and body armor and weapons to the Capitol. In front of the governor's mansion as well, and they were met by police who stood resolute. A very different reaction. As the church, we are called to live the spirit of love. We cannot live the spirit of love without loving each and every person. We cannot live the spirit of love without demanding that people be allowed to breathe. The man who died this week was suspected of forging a check. It turned out not to be true. Forging a check is not a capital crime. No court would have sentenced him to death. But he nonetheless ended up with a sentence of death administered by a police officer. We don't want to put police officers in jail. We want police officers to stop killing unarmed people. If it takes putting police officers in jail to make that happen, and that's what it takes. But that's not the goal. The goal is for police officers to stop killing unarmed people. Disproportionately, people of color are the ones being killed. There may be many reasons why somebody who has skin darker than mine immediately looks more dangerous. It doesn't mean that they are. The reasons may include what we have been taught by parents, what we have seen on television and in movies. But skin color is not an inherent indicator of danger. An unarmed man with dark skin is not such a danger that 4 armed police officers who have him in handcuffs need to exert that kind of force. In fact, the many white individuals who showed up at the Capitol and at the governor's mansion in Michigan with their long guns posed a much greater threat. We need to stand up for the spirits, for the breath, for the ruach of all people. If you're a member of my church, I would like you to strongly consider how we as a church can better serve people of color, how we can stand against racism. If you're not a member of my church, then by all means, I would like you too to see how you can help stand against racism. I don't want white voices to drown out black voices, but white voices need to speak in places where black voices cannot be heard. And that means having difficult conversations with people who are convinced that the color of one's skin makes somebody either more dangerous or less valuable, or both. In the spirit of Pentecost, in this season after Pentecost, which lasts all the way to Advent, let us fight for the spirit, for the breath of all people.